Hi everyone, I am Vendel reki, and I'm here with my colleagues Alberto and Daniel, and we are going to talk about how you can make your data portable. If you remember yesterday's presentation from Carlos and Pablo about the live frame movers one, this is the technical part of it. So we are mostly going to talk about the technical parts of how we achieve the integration of the batch engine into the staging framework. First of all, we would like to ask you to go to this to this GitHub repository, and with your GitHub user, please start this repository, because then you will be part of the presentation. Well, don't worry, it's a good thing, and you will still be able to see this QR code in the top right. First, we are going to introduce how we integrated the batch engine into staging. And the second one, we will tell about the advantages of this new implementation. And after that, we will have a coding session that we will show you how it works in practice in one of the actual elements that we use in LiveRay for a long time. So first of all, this might be familiar. This is how staging looked like. As you can see, First, we start with the contents, and every content in LiveRay has to have a portlet. Every content that we want to export or import, has to have a portlet and the portlet data handler. So if it has a portlet data handler, then the staging or export-import will be able to recognize it and handle its data. And after that, if we exported the contents, then we have the pages. And as you might already notice, this diagram is quite complicated because staging is complicated. First of all, let's just look at how many dependencies we have. We have, for example, journal, which is actually the web content. We export one web content. We have to export its ratings, the URLs, comments, display page. And the display page can go to whatever, because it can have fragments. It can have also comments and URLs and everything, friendly URLs and everything else. So it can be quite complicated, and it caused a lot of problems, for example, debugging, where we actually exported something. This one goes with the depth-first algorithm, so it will try to pick up things that are maybe not even needed at the first time. And this was okay in the past because it was mostly just pages and web contents and portlets. But now, as it's getting more complicated, we have fragments and all the other complex relationships between them. So this might need a new thing. So as you might see in this smooth transition, we hope the transition in the reality will be as smooth as this one. We replaced the portlet data handlers with the batch engine portlet data handler. This was the actual point where we could hook into the staging process and replace elements of it one by one. As you can see, it's much more streamlined, it's much more simplified. At the bottom, you can see these are the APIs that we can use. These are the headless APIs, and the batch engine uses these headless APIs to export and import the data. They will just execute this post and get methods. And the batch engine portlet data handler, this is what we added. It will replace the original portlet data handler, and it will be possible to export everything much faster, and everything will be much more efficient. That's what we plan to do. So the process starts here. This is your API. You can implement this interface called export import vulkan batch engine task item delegate. Quite a good name. We are good at naming. And It has a descriptor interface as well, and it has all the data that the registrar needs to register a batch engine portlet data handler for your processes. So you have your API, you implement this interface, and when you have that, then you will be able to, then the registrar will be able to find it and register a data handler for it automatically. So it's quite simple. So let's go to the next one.
Thank you, Vendel. So I would like to talk about some of the good things about this new infra. So first of all is the coexistence. Carlos already talked about this yesterday, but here we can see kind of the whole picture. So before we were working with portlet data handlers, and now we're working with portlet data handlers. But now these are the batch engine portlet data handlers. Before we had to actually implement one portlet data handler for each entity that we wanted to be export-import compatible. And now we would need to implement this interface that we just have seen, and automatically this batch engine portlet data handler would get instantiated for this entity. So for the user, this should be transparent. So the user is not, for the user, anything is going to change. But behind, we're going to follow a different path. So this is important because, of course, we don't want to break what is working at the moment, and we want to do what we call hybrid imports and hybrid exports, because while we are transitioning from the old export-import to the new way of export-import, so some entities might be using still the old way, and the ones that we're implementing will start using the new way. So this will be shown later in the coding time, but this is kind of the whole picture. Also, something really important with this new infra is the import reports. Before, if you were importing and something failed, for any reason, the whole process would fail at all. So you would have to see what happened and re-import. And you know that sometimes import processes could take a long time. So now we are able to see these import reports where we can see all the simple errors or the unique errors that have happened during the import process. Sometimes we can fix them, sometimes we cannot, but at least the import process as a whole won't fail because of a small error. We have also this new concept of lazy referencing, that this was a pain before, because imagine two entities that are related one to each other, and if we only import one of them without the related one, the import process would fail because we're missing a related entry. So now, not for all cases, but for most of them, we're able to say, okay, we're missing this reference. We're going to create something that we call empty shell, which is just like a dummy object or a skeleton of what we are missing. And then in the future, we will fix it. Right now, we can fix it manually, just filling this structure with the actual data, with the real data, or going back and importing again with the right data, which will fill this structure. So we have a lot of flexibility, as before we didn't have, and we can just import, and we don't have to make sure we're importing everything at once or taking so much care of the import order or anything. So much more flexibility. And for me, this is the most important. Since the beginning, we wanted to make this as easy as possible. So we don't want to reinvent everything, reinvent export, import. We want to, if we are going to do something, we want to make it easy. So we said, okay, we have the APIs, let's use them, because most of the services have their APIs and they work. So if basically this would be like, if you have a good API, you just have to implement minimum stuff, which we will see now, and you will be export-import compatible. You would be able to use this API to export-import. Of course, we could have from a really simple API to a really complex one, no? So we need to be somewhere in between, what we call a batch compatible API. So of course, there are some requirements that we need to meet, because for export-import to work, we need some methods and some endpoints, because if not, this won't work. But they're not too too tight. It's not too complex. We will also see this in the coding section. And of course, if you don't want to follow this path, you can always rely on objects, because objects out of the box, they are already export-import compatible, so you can go with it. Okay, so this is a workshop, so let's go to do some stuff. What are we going to do? We're going to take one entity that is already in the portal, which is users. Probably you all know users. We always need users. And we're going to make this entity export-import compatible. Before it wasn't. So we're going to make everything that is needed for it. So, okay, first of all, this is the repo that we shared at the beginning. I hope you all started. I can see, okay. Here you have the steps that you can follow this yourself, or later on. Later you can do it. These are the steps. Okay. So we said we're going to do it for users. Can we have the slides at the layout that shows the slides at the same time? Yes, this one. Okay, so we can have some support here. Okay, we've been talking about portlet data handlers. So we need a portlet. Why? The portlet is like the container, is the parent, because this is the way the infra works, and we scan the portlet. So if we don't have a portlet that will have a portlet data handler associated, we won't be able to see this in the UI, and we won't be able to export it. So we need a portlet. We said that we're going to import users, so we need a portlet for users. We need a simple portlet just for it to be visible by the infra. So let's do it. Okay. We had this users admin portlet before, but we're going to create one. So you can see, let me check. I'm going to copy it and name it user admin portlet. Okay, here we are. And I'm going to use the same repo that you have. I'm going to copy it to be quicker. Okay. So as you can see, it's a simple portlet. I mean, it doesn't have anything. Even it's hidden for the UI, so because we don't need to see anything. Okay. And we are going to add a key, which is the one that we will be using to relate the implementation of the interface to this portlet. We will say the interface, okay, this is the portlet ID that I'm using, or this is the portlet that I am relating to. So we will add this key, okay, here. Hope it's sorted. Okay. So we have the portlet. Next step. I kind of lied to you because we said that only implementing the interface was enough. But for some performance issues, we decided to add a new property to the REST resource, so it's easier for the registrar to see which resources are implementing export-import. So we don't only need to implement the interface, but we also need to add this property. So we take the property, which is this one. The nested field one was there before. So this is the resource import of the users. So here we have the methods for the API of users. So we have all the endpoints here. We will add this new property here. As I said, for the registrar to check and know that we want to implement export-import. And now we need to implement the interface. Okay? So the interface has this long name that Vendel already talked about. So implements this interface. We import the class, and we are all set. We have to implement the method. So I already have it here. I'm going to explain a bit about. So this is the interface. Let me copy it, and I will explain it. Also, you can see it here. Let's do it right here. Okay, so now it's not complaining. This is the interface that we are implementing. This is only to let the registrar know some information that needs to instantiate the batch engine for data handler that will be used later on, as we saw on the schema, to perform the export-import. We will go through batch, the REST API, and finally to the service. Before, we were going directly through the portlet data handler, but the tailor-made portlet data handler to the service. So what do we need to tell the register? First, the model class name. This is the internal model class name because we are talking about APIs. These are all external models. And we know that we might have some internal models that do not correspond to the external ones. Even sometimes we have one internal model and we divide it into some 3, 4, or 5 different external models because we don't need to expose exactly what we have internally, right? So this is the internal user class, okay? Portlet ID, this is the key that we added before, see? Okay, so this is just to reference it right here. Resource class name, this really doesn't matter what we use here as long as it is unique. This is used for some controls for the UI, so we will see it later, but in the UI you will be able to, you will have some checkboxes and you will be able to check or select or unselect whatever you need. So this is, at least, as long as this is unique, this is fine. And then the scope, of course. We support site and also company or instance scope export import. So in this case, we're going to do it site scope. So we will have site scope users, and this will just show it the entity or enable the entity on the site scope menu or on the company scope menu. We have other methods that we can override here. I can do override methods. We can look at some of them. For example, we have label language key. This is something that we are working on now because we want to be able to translate the entity's name. Nested fields, because sometimes, so this as I said, we can go back to the schema. So we're going through the batch, REST API, and then service. So these nested fields will travel all around this path, and because sometimes we have an entity that has some nested fields that maybe we want to, by default, export them. So we don't want the user, there's no way for the user to enter these nested fields. So we want these nested fields to be by default exported. So we would put them on this, we will return them with this method, and they will get to the API and they will be returned. If you need some parameters, you can also provide them through here, and then you can do whatever you need on the REST API with them. So you can customize it a bit. You can activate this portlet data handler with a feature flag, for example, or under some constraint. Yes. Okay, let's go back to where we were. So this should be all, right? But I also said that we need a batch-compatible API. And at the moment, the user's API is not fully batch-compatible. It's really close, but there's something missing about the permissions. So I'm going to hand it over to Alberto. He's going to talk about how to fix this issue.
Okay. Thank you, Danny. So hi, everyone. Now I'm going to focus a lot on the REST builder changes. So as you could tell, the new export import is basically built around batch engine, and we can't talk about batch engine without talking of REST APIs, and the way we implement this here at library is through REST builder. So in order to simplify some of these processes, we've been adapting REST builder in order to simplify the implementation of these sorts of changes for everyone, internally or externally to the library. So we're going to go ahead and start performing those changes. So if I go here, you will see that the next step is going to be related to permissions, okay? One of the functionalities that export import supports is exporting and importing the permissions of the entities that are being exported. So in order to do this through REST APIs, we need to provide some permission endpoints and also add those permissions as an option while you are exporting and importing through the specific batch methods. So the first thing we are going to do is add these endpoints because they weren't previously there in the API. So I'm just going to copy paste them into the YAML file. So let me go ahead. So here is the REST Open API YAML. And let me go, for example, here. Okay. So as you can see, we are just adding a get permissions endpoint and a put permissions endpoint for the user account. So this isn't something completely new about all the batch stuff, but we already have some magic that happens if you follow these specific patterns for the permissions endpoints, in which we can generate the logic to access the resource permissions layer that is the one that is going to process the different permissions that are available for the different entities. So this isn't the part that it's completely new. The thing that is new is this new property, which is called the generate permissions property. So let me go ahead to the restconfig.yaml file and let me add it. So permissions true. Okay. So now it's already set up in order to get these changes already done by REST Builder. So I'm going to execute it. In the meantime, so basically what the generate permission does is set up REST Builder in order to search for those endpoints that could be benefited by having some nested permissions put into them. So in this case, it's important for us in export-import because we are automatically adding some logic that allows us to export and import the permissions through the read and create methods, which are the basics for exporting and importing through batch. So it seems like it has worked. So let me go ahead and show the changes. So this is the user account. This is the implementation. We shouldn't have any changes here. But if I go to the base class, which is the one that gets auto-generated, you will see, well, one moment. Okay, so you will see here that we have lots of changes. So the first one is for example, this one that is the get account user the get account user account space. As you can see, now it's declared as final. Why? Because we need to preserve this logic that we are adding for the permissions, because this is the thing we need to preserve in order to export and import them. And we are adding some new endpoints, some new methods that are just the same operation name, which is get account user account space, but we are adding a do previously. So if I go to this method, you will see that it's declared as an abstract method, and what we need to do is implement them at the user account resource import. Basically, this is the same method that was before, but we need to change its name in order to have this logic splitted between the nested permissions and the real logic of retrieving and inputting data. So if I go to the user account resource import, you will see that I'm getting some weird errors because this should be final and whatever. So if you have this already implemented in your API, what you will probably need to do is just add the do and cap this, and also change this because now it's a protected method. So this is what you will need to do in order to implement this in your case. So as you can see, there are many ones. So let me go ahead to the steps, and I'm just going to copy it, because if not, it will take a long time. Oh, sorry, not here. I think it's step 6. Yeah. So I'm just going to copy paste it. Okay. So ignore that there are more changes than expected, but it's the same thing, but just changing with adding the do get. So the final step will be, okay. So the final step will be something related also to the permissions. As you can see here, if I go to the, sorry. Which is the set here?
Which one?
La Z. Set.
Set?
Yeah, like control, like to go back. Sorry, weird Hungarian layout here.
Yeah. Control Z.
Yeah, Control Z.
That should be it. I don't know.
Okay, so let me just. Whatever. I'm going to copy paste it again and just. So here. Okay, now. So if I search for get user account permissions page. So I've copy pasted it in the wrong class, I believe. Yeah. I think so. Yeah, sorry. Let me just. Let me just execute build rest again. Should be fixed by that. Okay. Now, so if I go to, I believe it will be here, root user account, or, well, get user account page, permissions page. So here is the methods that we've added through these endpoints. So as you can see, here we have auto-generated some logic in order to calculate the permissions from the resource permission layer. So in order to provide the necessary data to do this auto-generation, we have to create some endpoints, like some private methods that provide this data to the service layer. So what we are going to go ahead and do is just copy-paste these auxiliary methods. So just let me go to the user account resource symbol, and we're just going to add it here, for example. So in theory, with this should be already good enough. So this should be working now. But first we need to deploy all the changes. I don't know if some of you have followed like the coding. It's a little bit complex, I know. But if you've done this, you will need to deploy in this order. Like first this module. I'm just going to. So first this one, then the API, the implementation, and the client, because we are going to use it later through our front end. So as soon as this finishes, we are going to get users exportable and importable through these simple steps.
You sure?
Yeah.
Let's try it, no? Let's export it.
Okay. So
Give me, yes, let's do it.
yeah.
I have all those changes deployed already on my laptop, so I'm going to, it won't reach. Okay. So let's make a test. Can I get just my screen now, please? Well, this is fine like this, if not. Okay, let's test it. So, for those of you who have started the repo, now we should be able to see you here, okay? So everything that I just did is just adding users to to my library instance, okay? With your information, with your user information from GitHub, okay? So some of you have done it, okay? We can even sort by create date. So Jorge, or Alex is the most popular one. Okay, so as I said, I have everything deployed. Everything that we have done here is deployed here. So we should be able, at least, to see users here. Nice. First step, 23 users. But remember about the lazy referencing concept, that we were able to create these empty shells if we have we had some reference that was missing into the environment that I'm going to import later. We're going to try to test that too, okay? That makes sense because everything that Alberto was doing about the permissions is for that. Because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a role, okay? A new role. Let's call it my new role, okay? This role, in Alberto's instance, he doesn't have it. So I'm going to take one of the users, and I'm going to assign some new permissions to it. Let's get Pablo, for example, permissions, and I'm going to add these new permissions. I'm going to give all of them for Pablo. Okay. So as I was saying, this new role is not, Alberto doesn't have this new role. So I'm going to export this. The permissions are going to get exported and then imported, and his instance is going to say, okay, I don't have this role. Before, this would fail, and it would make the whole import process to fail. Now, if everything works well, we should be able to create this empty shell and later on fix it, no? Importing actually the role or even creating it manually, okay? Okay, I have updated, so let's go now back to export. I'm going to also export the page so he can also see the page I created here for the users. So I'm exporting the users, and as I said, I'm going to export the permissions. This would be the thing that will make the empty shell get created. If I don't export the permissions, he won't be able to import them, of course. Export. Nice. At least it looks like it worked. So this is my new lar file. I'm going to send it to him. Let's go here. Dun, dun, dun. This is the file. We can look at it a bit. So we said we're using the batch engine, and the batch engine uses the API, and it uses JSONs. So if we go inside, we can see here, see, this is the user, and this is a JSON. So here we should have all the information. This is what has been exported, actually. And actually, if I look for my new role, hey, I have it here, under the permissions. So Alberto is going to try to import this, and it should fail in a safe way. Okay, so let's get this lar file and send it to Vendel. Okay?
Okay.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I have it here.
Okay. Let's change back. So I have already imported.
Okay.
Wait, exported, sorry.
So we're going to try to see if it works. Okay. So we have it here. I have it already downloaded. Let me show you that this isn't any trick. There aren't any users in here. If I go to the roles tab, you will see that if I search for, how was it called?
My new role.
New role. Nothing. So there's no trapping here. It's completely new, fresh out of the box. So now I'm going to go to my site and go to the import process. So import, I'm going to select the file. So in theory, should be this one. And just continue. As you can see here, we have documents and media and fragments, which is the page that was displaying previously all the users. We have the users, and then we have here the permissions. So I'm going to check that box in order to see if everything works as expected. So I'm going to go ahead, click on import, progress. I'm going to press F5 because I believe this is...
This is doing the hybrid import because the page is not implemented yet with a new approach. So the page, the fragment is going through the old path, and the users is going through the new path that we have just implemented.
Yeah. Okay. So even without seeing if the users have been imported, let's see the error report. So in here, yeah. So as you can see here, we have some empty errors, and these are related to the roles that were in the previous system and that had some permissions over the users that have been imported, but are not present in this system. So I can even go ahead and see more details about this error. In this case, this is an empty error. We don't have any error messages, but you can also hear that we have already another error, which is related to the screen name. So we have a test user both in his system and in my system, but they don't have the same external reference code. So it's trying to add it, but the screen name is already present. So we can also report these issues that are from the different services. So we have like lots of flexibility in order to report this kind of errors. And in fact, if I go here, I can even see the full stack trace for the building this kind of stuff, because when you have lots of different entities that have failed, this saves a lot of time. So now I'm going to go to home, and in theory, we should be seeing every single one of the users and the page.
Thank you.